Great.
Christina. Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rocha Revolution Substack show here today, coming to you live from Washington, D.C. I'm super stoked to be joined by my sister from Houston, Texas, Christina Morales, State Rep Christina Morales. Good to see you, sister.
Good to see you, brother.
Uh, we
Excited
were
to
just
be
we were just together this weekend in Austin, and I asked her if she would come on the show to talk a little bit about a training that you have all seen me tweet about and talk about that I was super amped about when I left. But before we talk about the House Democratic Caucus, where Rep. Morales is the chairwoman, I will want to talk about you. Tell our viewers about you. You're an elected official in Houston, a state rep. Tell us first, not about the district or where you represent. We'll do that second. Tell us about you and your family and how y'all made it to Texas.
Wow. So, my family has a nearly 100-year history here in Houston, Texas. My grandparents came in from San Antonio and opened the first Latino-owned funeral business here in the city, and it was during the Depression. At that time, Latinos literally were holding their funerals in garages
Oh, wow.
because it was crazy. During that time, there was a lot of segregation and there were funeral homes, but they were not for Latinos. But they got really comfortable holding these funerals in garages. But my grandparents started this funeral home and then they were able to have a space, a nice, big, beautiful funeral home in which to have their services. But my grandpa's dream was to own a radio station. So eventually they opened the first Spanish language radio station in the entire Gulf Coast and were very successful. And I took over the funeral home business, running it many years. They also had a nonprofit that I took over. My grandmother started the Morales Memorial Foundation, and really having that long family history and then running the nonprofit, seeing people at their worst because I run the funeral home, and then also giving back to the community through our family foundation. It just really set me up to run for office. And a friend tapped me and said, "I think you should run." I did, and I won, and very, very grateful to represent this community.
So your mother and father, they still with us?
No, they are not. I actually became an orphan when I was 15 years old.
Okay.
And I say that that's something else that helps me as a legislator. You hear people sometimes say, well, the parents should be involved, or why didn't the parents do this? And you can't assume everybody has some strong parental figures at home,
Right.
because I didn't. I mean, my sister did her best to try to take care of us, and she was just a young person herself, but we just didn't want to be separated. And so, you get to see life through a different lens, and mental health issues and alcoholism and all of these things that a lot of times, a lot of my colleagues have never gone through that. um, Many of them understand it, but sometimes they don't because they haven't been through it themselves. And so I've been through a lot of that stuff, and I try to keep that in mind and those stories in mind when I'm in at the Capitol.
I think that makes you very real, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of not only politicians, but also when I call out consultants, which I do a lot, is that and it doesn't make people bad, they just have a different life experience. It's just like the folks that are representing rich places in Texas. It don't mean that they're bad people because they're trying to get rich people to get more money, because that's what they're probably elected to do by rich people, because it's a different life experience. What you bring is real life experience of the trauma you've dealt with. My daddy left when I was 5, and my mother was just 15. I talked about that this weekend when I was born, and,
Yeah.
had a different life experiences with, a teenage mama raising to me, and me and my mama still laugh. I'm lucky enough to still have her. We raised each other, and I was the man of the house when I was 16. But think about that. When I was 15 or 16, my mama was just 31. So this was me and my mom and my little sister coming up together. But let's talk about this. Enough about Chuck Rocha. Uh, uh, this weekend, something stuck with me that me and you mentioned. I'm one of these guys that doesn't read or write very good, but I have a really good memory. And when me and you were standing in the room this weekend at this training, you talked about how these women lifting up women, these Latinas lifting up Latinas in Houston, and how there was a vacancy by the late dear man who I love, Gene Green. And Gene Green did so much for me when I was a young organizer with the unions back in the day. I was sent to Houston to work on a special election for Ken Benson and end up going down to Galveston and running a special election for Nick Lampson back in the day. Well, when he leaves at some point, Sylvia Garcia runs for that seat. And I think now you correct me, I'm going to go through this, but you correct me. She was a state senator, ran for Congress. The state rep that was there underneath her, she decides to run for the state Senate. And does that open up the seat then for you to run?
Yes, it left an open seat. It was this domino effect of Latinas moving up. So Sylvia Garcia ran for Congress, won, and then that seat was open in the Senate. So Carol Alvarado, then state rep, now senator, ran and won. And then the seat was left open. And I waited till filing deadline to file because I was really nervous about running. It was my first time. But yes, I won and I'm still here. That was in 2019. Well, 2018, those elections happened, but I didn't win until 2019. So yeah, it was exciting times.
And then me and you got connected because, again, you reach out to Carol when you decide you would like to have me come speak to this training this weekend. And that's how me and you got connected because Carol's got my cell phone. But
Yes.
because when she was running for the state senate, a buddy of mine down there was helping her, and we ended up doing either some mail or some phones. It was some time ago. But this is how the community, I tell that story, not to say, oh, great Christina, great Chuck. It's that there's not many of us, and we're all kind of connected, not like these major white consultants and all these white candidates. Again, not bad people, just different. And they have mamas and daddies who've been involved in politics for a long time. And we, all of us, me and you, Christina, we don't have that. So we have each other. So now my connections are your connections. And when you help other Latinas who are probably running in Houston, you reach back and help them. And I think this is the real cycle that we've kind of been talking through. Let me ask this question about your district. Tell folks, because Houston is so massive, it's people don't realize how big Houston is and how ginormous Harris County is. But tell us about the neighborhoods that you represent and what does that look like?
Oh yeah. I feel so fortunate to have the district that I have. I live in Second Ward, which is known by my community as Segundo Barrio. And it's where my grandparents started their businesses 100 years ago. This is where all the Latinos, uh, most of the ones who live in Houston originated from because they worked along the bayou at the train, at Union Pacific, the trains, and Southern Pacific, and in the port. So from there, they moved further south. I have a lot of those old neighborhoods. Magnolia Park, Mason Park is in my district, a literal park, Mason Park. And then I also have the north side because many of them moved to north side. So there's a big park, Moody Park. Lindell Park is a neighborhood. So all of these historic Latino neighborhoods where our community has grown and raised their families are all within this district. I have all the high schools that also where a lot of folks graduated from, went to elementary and middle school. And during redistricting, I did take up a lot of the Heights neighborhood, which it back in the day was very diverse, a little more diverse. It's a lot of white progressive families now. The home prices are really high, but I proudly represent that community too, a very progressive community. So I really love the people that I get to represent. But it is very historic and a lot of historic landmarks here.
Before we get to the training, I think folks have seen so much with not talking about Tallarico, not talking about our dear sister Gina, but before that, they've seen all of this stuff in the press around the Texas legislature and gerrymandering. Have you been involved since you're in the state house? And again, we know that you're in the minority, but can you tell the audience what you've witnessed over the last few years in redistricting in Texas and how Republicans are trying to run roughshod over democracy, maybe?
Sure. I mean, we had very little input, um, actually none, in the last lines that were drawn for the congressional seats.
Can I
And
stop you, Christina? Is this
sure,
when Donald Trump called the Texas House and said, I need 5 new seats? Is that what you're talking about?
that is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm sure, yeah, he called our governor, who just decided, hey, we need to do this. And uh, interestingly enough, it happened after our legislative session had started. So right away, things started scrambling, and they were making sure that they could give Donald Trump those 5 districts that he wanted. There was a big fight. We broke quorum. We left to Chicago. We brought attention to the issue, which in turn, California did their own redistricting, but on the Democratic side. So it was a very intense period. We had no input into how those lines were drawn. They were purely for Republicans uh, to gain those 5 seats. We're feeling really great about how those seats were drawn because we think we can win some of those back, even though they were drawn for Republicans. So we're working really hard to do that. But one thing that I think folks are not talking about that they need to be aware of is, as I'm working on flipping the Texas House, if we don't flip the House, Republicans could do this same thing all over again, but not only with congressional seats, but with Senate seats and Texas House seats. We've seen some tweets already go out about how they have the desire to do that to for more political gain, and that should be very scary because if we do not um, have some kind of fairness among our maps, the Republicans would take control of Congress at the federal level for generations. And, we would never have a voice or any kind of leverage. So we should be worried about that right now.
I'm gonna get to the House caucus. And as people so think about this, y'all. A lot of you know the federal stuff, and you think about the DCCC, the committee that runs all of the federal House races. Well, Chairwoman Morales here is part of that caucus, but for the state house, and that was kind of where and who was behind the training that I did with all of these. For the first time, when I did all these trainings, but I just did a little piece of it. They had a lot of great trainers. I just did one tiny little piece of it. What's really different in Texas is that for the first time that I can remember, Chairwoman, it seems like there's a Democrat opposing a Republican at every single state House seat in Texas. And please tell our audience how many of those races are there in Texas?
Wow, there's 150.
Whoa, 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 whoa. 150 House races. And you
Yeah.
have a Democrat in each one of them, whether they're Democrat, swingy, or a quote unquote safe Republican.
Yes, we have them, and, I'm grateful to the Democratic Party here in Texas for making sure that there's a Democrat running in just about every seat in Texas. But for me, as the chair of the campaign committee, I'm closely watching our 150 seats. So I'm helping our incumbents stay in office. We're watching some of those seats that, could flip the other way. And, some of our members are always in those swing seats that are 50-50. But also, for those seats that are red, we've got some amazing candidates who are learning, who came to our training this weekend. And thank you so much for coming when I called and asked. And they're working to flip those seats. And, we saw this in 2018, if you remember, in the last Trump midterm. And we didn't even help those candidates who won, and they still flipped 12 seats. So this time around, we are starting early. We're bringing them to a candidate training. We're making sure they're hitting their marks when it comes to fundraising, block walking, and we're going to win some seats.
Chairwoman Morales, how many seats do you need to flip to gain the majority?
We need 14.
And you're saying the last time in 2018 they flipped 12. This is for all of you scoring at home was when Beto ran for the Senate.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you had 12 then, it's such, and y'all have heard me talk about this on TV and on Substack, it's such a different environment from 2018, which was the first year after Donald Trump got elected, which looks a lot like this year. But here, listen to me and hear me out. Is the difference is that Beto O'Rourke got within 2.6 points of winning, and he lost, but behind him, because of the energy, you flip 12 House races and Democrats overperform. So we assume that's going to happen. But what's different now is gas is almost $4 a gallon in Texas. Folks' energy bills have doubled. They're running out of water in Corpus Christi. Ground beef is double what it was back then. And all of these tensions on Texas working class families have really wrung them out, and they're really pissed. That's why you saw a 30% of folks who voted in the Democratic primary in Texas be new Democratic primary voters who had never voted in primary. And of those, 12% of them were Republican. I've been talking about this to show the energy is there. So for those of you sitting back going, there is no way, Chuck and Chairwoman, that you could flip seats. Absolutely, there's a way to do that. That's why recruiting these candidates are so important. And the last point that I'm going to ask you this question is think about the turnout in a red East Texas where I'm from. If you don't have anybody on the ballot, you have no Democrat there talking to anybody, so we lose all these races. But if you have a candidate there who's getting a few extra hundred people to vote because she or he's on the ballot, and then that's replicated in 100 districts that may be red, think about how that adds up. That's the brilliance of what the chairwoman, the Texas Party, and supporting donors have done here. So this weekend, you bring those folks to Austin to give them a candidates training. Tell me about that, chairwoman, and what was the emphasis behind that and what you wanted to accomplish?
Wow. Well, I want to make sure that all of our candidates feel supported, not just those in those top tier races. And I don't know if you saw it, but today the DLCC, or the national level of what I'm doing, put out a list of their priority candidates, targeted seats in Texas. And those are the candidates that have the best opportunity to win. And a lot of factors went into them choosing those. There's about 13, and a couple of them are incumbents as well. So we're protecting a couple of seats, and then we think we can flip certain seats. But just to the point that you made, when we have candidates, regardless of whether they have a big or a small chance of winning, working those smaller districts, each state house district is 200,000 constituents. We just improve voter turnout by making sure that those people are knocking on doors, that they're raising money, that their friends and family are invested in those campaigns, and they're also going out and working. Many of these districts have never had a Democrat to vote for, so they're going to be the link and the energy that we need to make sure people are voting and voting up and down the ballot. And, to have James Tallarico and then Gina Hinojosa, one of my comadres, my best friends, she also plays an important role in, just making sure all those connections are made, that, Tallarico and then Gina and then those congressional seats. And then it just keeps going down. And I think we'll make sure that folks are voting from the top of the ticket all the way down, voting for some amazing Democrats who do understand that the price of ground beef is double right now. And, who do understand that our insurance, whether it's health, auto, any kind of insurance, is very, very expensive. And, trying to figure out if we're going to put our kids in daycare and which ones, because we can't afford it. I mean, those are the kind of people who are running as candidates, and they're going to be able to connect with their districts. And I think we're going to have a very successful November.
Let me peel that back a little bit. One of the things that sat with me this weekend, and I've done lots of candid trainings, like I said in the training, and I've been around lots of candidates teaching them how to be on camera or communications. Again, I have a wealth of riches, and I'm very fortunate to be in my position. But the thing that really stuck with me this weekend, Chairwoman, as I worked the room, got there early. Now, I got there early because I want to make sure I was the first one to the breakfast tacos. Let me be clear. But the thing that really sat with me is there wasn't a bunch of doctors. There wasn't a bunch of lawyers. There wasn't a bunch of college professors. It was regular folks. Not that any of those three people aren't regular, but I met a lot of nurses, folks that own small businesses. I met a fellow who was a retired federal worker. Was that intentional? Because I think that's what really drew me to these folks is they're just regular people running for office.
What's awesome is that these are the people who stepped up and are fired up. These are everyday people who are being impacted by the policies that are being put forth under the current administration, whether it's, tariffs, um, vouchers in our schools, cutting SNAP benefits. These are the folks who are directly being impacted by all of these policies. And I would say a vast majority of our candidates are school teachers. School teachers are so angry right now. And so they've stepped up to run. And I'm so excited that it is regular folks. And hey, some of my best friends are lawyers, but we've got a lot of them in the house. And just as I talked earlier about how I was an orphan, my sister was trying to raise me. We need people with different perspectives to govern, to have a seat at the table, to be able to create the policies that help regular working Texans, because that's who the vast majority of our state is. And we're just tired of politicians who are looking out for billionaires. We're not going to do it anymore. And we're going to be uh, powered by the people, and we have real people running.
Well, that's really awesome. And I think it's really interesting. And that's why I wanted to lift up this conversation and have the chairwoman here to say, think about this, y'all. Is people talk about Texas being this ruby red state and Texas is never going to turn blue and blah, blah, blah. Team Tallarico can't win. And the governor's got so much money. How could Gina Hinojosa? All that is garbage. Because if that was true, then we wouldn't have these great candidates. If that was true, we wouldn't have this great training. If that was true, we wouldn't have a person running in every one of those places. And it's a really different time. And that's why I wanted to lift up this conversation. Chairwoman, is there a website or a place folks could go to if they wanted to support the caucus, like with a donation or anything?
Oh, absolutely. Our website is texashdcc.com. It's easy to
Say it again.
remember because I remember it. texashdcc.com. And that's Texas. The acronym is House Democrats Campaign Committee.com. And listen, $5, $100, $5,000, we'll take it all. I've been doing a lot of call time trying to share our message about how winning these smaller districts and making sure that we're supporting these candidates who can win and make sure people are voting in these 200,000 constituent districts can elevate everybody up and down the ticket, including James Tallarico and Gina Hinojosa, our amazing candidates at the top. So let's make sure they have something to work with if they win. We need to have a House that reflects Texas and understands the issues that Texans really face.
And the Republicans in Texas have made it where in Texas, if you're running for state legislature, if you're running for a Texas office, there's no limits. That's how they get all these hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. So for any of my really rich friends out there, Amanda Renteria, you can give unlimited money. You can write a check for $100,000 and just put it right up in there, and then folks can spend it. I'm joking. Y'all know I make it light. But it is one of those things where on the Republican side, and Chairwoman, please correct me if I'm wrong, don't they have people just giving like globs of these rich oil men from the West giving these big checks to Republicans in Texas?
Oh my goodness. They're getting money from so many folks. It's hard to keep up. And I mean, the most notable, that always stays in my mind is Jeff Yaz giving the governor millions of dollars just so they could pass school vouchers. And, um, it's just crazy that's allowed to happen and that it is actually happening in Texas. We there aren't lobbyists for people who need SNAP benefits. That's the reality. There aren't lobbyists for people who can't pay their rent. And that's what we need. We need people who have real solutions for real problems that people are facing right now. And I'm excited and we welcome all donations, big or small, because we just want to make sure we have a team in place that's keeping these candidates supported and making sure they're hitting their numbers and getting folks out to vote. So many of these folks never have run for office before, which is so exciting because, there is people are a little tired of folks that they feel have been too long in office. And we need some of those people who have been in office for a long time because they have that institutional knowledge that we need and that seniority. But we do need some fresh faces, some fresh voices, and people who come from a different lens of things that we haven't seen in a while.
Thank you so much for being here. You get two easy questions to end with. We ask the same two questions of the folks who join us on this podcast. One has to do with food and one has to do with music, which are both rooted in our cultures here in our Latinidad. So the first is the meal, whether you make it, whether somebody in your family used to make it, but it was the one meal you really look forward to, whether you were young or old, it doesn't matter, but it's your go-to. It's the thing that makes you happy. It could be at a restaurant, it could be something you cook yourself, but I need to know your go-to meal that makes you the happiest.
Oh gosh, it's easy for me to answer. I live really close to Ninfa's on Navigation, which is the original Ninfa's, and El Tiempo, which is part of her family. And at either one, I order the carnitas plate. I'm just, for some reason lately, I'm just wanting to eat carnitas with some avocado, aguacate, and I make it at home too. I have a fabulous recipe that I saved and shared with all the family and so whenever we have a big family get together, I make it here at home and we just eat some, pork tacos. It's delicious. I love
Making me hungry. Making me
it.
hungry. The last question is, I call it what would be your walk-up song. Some people ask what is your pump-up song. Some people call it your go for a run song. And some people I just need to know what is that song you have to play to get yourself going. It could be your favorite song or it could just be whatever, but I need to know what song you go to tell us a little bit about you.
Wow. Right now I love anything from Bad Bunny. But yesterday I was talking to a friend and telling them about Easy Band, which is a local Houston band. I just love them. They sing like Tejano style, all the old 80s music. And there was a song by the band that was called Aha, Take on Me. And
Yes.
I love that song. And so it's Take on
Take
Me.
on me.
Yes, but Tejano style, so you gotta check it out.
Oh, give us the website one more time before we end this thing.
Yes, TexasHDCC.com. Por favor, donate today. Help me keep the lights on. Let's get these candidates trained, ready to go, and ready for a win in November.
Thank you to Chairwoman and State Rep Christina Morales. I will see you in Corpus Christi at the Texas Democratic Convention. Y'all be good. And until next week, be good. Bye bye.